Greetings, everyone. My name is Charles Kovach, the not safe for work presidential candidate campaigning for a more direct democracy. And because simply saying I think we should all have a more direct democracy over and over and over again gets kind of dull and boring and repetitive, I make videos discussing current topics and other things that interest me as a way to garner attention. So, let's begin. The first thing I want to talk about is gaming. Yay, I love gaming. It's one of my favorite things to do. Specifically, I want to talk more about the idea of China in gaming. We've all seen what's happened with Blizzard Activision and Blitzchung in his comments. And what has been talked about a lot is how much the Chinese company Tencent has stake in other video gaming companies. Specifically, they own Riot Games, which probably explains why I keep seeing League of Legends advertisements on YouTube all the fucking time. Now, let's not forget that China is notorious for spying on its citizens, and other companies that are in bed with China help them to do this. So, it would be prudent to suspect that some of your video games are spying on you, especially when there's chat involved or any kind of MOBA that has anything to do company-wise with China. This is not beyond the realm of possibilities, as well as other games being virtually Trojan horses into your computers to see what all you're doing and feed that information back to China. Check which games are requesting internet access. And I think also Vox did an article about something similar about a month or two ago. So, just something to note and be aware of. But, of course, that's not the only one spying on you. We still have the social credit score that Apple gives everybody without letting them know. But another thing, apparently, that lobbyists are pushing for is to nationalize the 911 system, which, on its face, seems okay. Maybe it'll be helpful. But along with that, you'd be forced to install an app on your phone, which gives them access to everything and absolutely everything on your phone. Yeah. But while people are trying to find out everything about you, they're trying to not let you know about things you want to know. And I'm referring to Steven Crowder, the guy who got demonetized for simply reading the Green New Deal legislation. He exposed recently that Tulsi Gabbard was suppressed by the YouTube algorithm when she was popular through the whole spat back and forth with Fembush. Fun times we live in, I know. I was watching Philip DeFranco yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And, it's pretty funny when even somebody like Philip DeFranco comes out and says, hey, it seems like there's protests and unrest and all kinds of horse shit going on all over the world. I mean, that's the reason why I started this campaign in the first place. But even still, Philip DeFranco, he's a family man, so he's not going to ever go against the mainstream narrative. At least not too much. When he was talking about riots and protests, he was talking about Hong Kong, he talked about the situation in Venezuela, and of course he didn't mention the Yellow Vest protest in France. He was talking about Lebanon and the protests going on there, and I think it was him talking about. Anyways, and if you look at, it's pretty funny because if you look at the concessions that the government is willing to make with the people, some of them are actually make things worse, because they involve privatization of public assets. I don't know how this is supposed to make any average citizen feel better. I mean, we've seen what a mess privatization has caused here in the States. And let's not forget that the IMF, whenever they want to lend money to a country, or whenever a country wants to borrow money from them, the IMF says, okay, make sure you sell all your public assets into private hands and suppress your people as much as you can. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what the effects are. So, yeah, all around the world, people are rising up and trying to throw off the chains that all the rich people everywhere are putting on them. And yet, you'll still have people that will toe the line and talk the talking points, and they'll believe the demonization of things like communism and socialism. Okay, I'm going to just refer to my video of 3 words that you believe mean something they're not. And ultimately, you have to ask yourself the question, if communism and socialism are so bad, then why are they always demonized as being something they're not, and not demonized for what they actually are? Why are they not demonized for what they actually mean? And you still have people that believe that government should stay out of everything, even though by definition government actually means people like you and me. And I'm pretty sure I told the story a while back, but I'll tell it again, of a guy who told me he would much rather invest his money in a private institution than in the government. So something that's not answerable to him rather than something that is answerable to him. This whole idea of government being the bad guy all the time only depends on who's in control of the government. And when the rich and powerful are demonizing government, that's because they know that you still have a say in things. You still have control. So think about that when you open your mouth about your opinions on government should stay out of our lives. The fact is that everybody understands that we're all part of a community. Everybody understands that we have to do our little parts to help each other out. Even the most right-wing religious nut jobs. This is why they donate money to church. Because they're helping people out. They're paying their dues. That's what taxes are, right? Paying your dues. Just stuff to think about. And I'll end on a funny note. Well, maybe not so funny, but I find it humorous that many people in Congress don't understand the First Amendment. You have Tulsi Gabbard suing Google for not allowing her ads to run because of their bullshit reason. And you had a bunch of Republicans get together and write a letter to, I think it was Google also, or YouTube, for not wanting to run Trump ads. That's not what the First Amendment is about. But I find it interesting because many people believe that the First Amendment should apply to these large platforms. That these platforms shouldn't be allowed to discriminate based on their own personal beliefs, whether they be political or religious or whatnot. And the fact that people in Congress seem to believe that this is how things at least should be, maybe we'll see some change. Just some food for thought on that aspect. And because I got another minute or so I want to put in so that I can hit the 10-minute mark, I want to talk about arguments, debates, and what have been called fallacies that are not actually fallacies. One thing you've heard as a weapon against Fox News is this whole notion of whataboutism. That's not a thing. It never was. And I know I'm not the first to say this publicly. I mean, this is something I've said privately to no one, because this is just, when I first heard of the notion, I was like, wow, that's completely fucking stupid. But when making arguments and pointing out things, it is a fair retort to draw a parallel. Now, you can argue at the merits of that parallel whether something is actually along the same lines or if it's something completely different. But this whole notion of whataboutism as a general practice is just a way to break down people's ability to actually have intelligent conversations with one another. I mean, yes, you can say, okay, you're trying to deflect and distract, but you know what? We already have words for that. Saying, what about this, is not an illegitimate argument if you are drawing a fair parallel. And also something that other people have talked about, and that I will talk about also, is this whole notion of a slippery slope. Well, it's fair to assess risks. Okay, it's whenever you make a decision, you have to measure the risk versus reward. We do this all the time. We don't even think about it. Should I wake up in the morning? Well, if I don't wake up, it might be bad for me. But if I do wake up, I might get hit by a flying saucer. You know, these are reasonable risks that we all have to assess. So to say something is a slippery slope, again, that's you're trying to draw a parallel. These can be based off previous situations. Now, how likely they are and how prudent they are, or I guess reasonable would be a better word, how likely they are and how reasonable they are, that can be argued. That's fine. But in a world where many things are possible, my computer just froze. Oh, there we go. But yeah, a world where many things are possible, and I'll leave it at that. If a more direct democracy is something that you are interested in, then please spread the word about this campaign, and I thank you for your time.